Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Sapna Dadwal. I'm working as a professor in the Department of Management at St. Andrews Institute of Technology and Management. This is lecture 15 of consumer protection, and with this I'm starting unit 4 of consumer protection. Till now we have covered unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, and this is the last unit of this syllabus, unit 4. The topic I am going to cover in this lecture are objectives of consumer movement, consumerism. I am going to discuss this concept and definitions, and then consumer protection movement in India. I am going to give you a brief history of consumer protection movement in India, when it started, so how it moves. So I'm starting with first topic, that is consumer movement, objectives of consumer movement. But first I would like to tell you about consumer movement. What is consumer movement? Consumer movement is a socio-economic movement that seeks to protect the rights of consumer in relation to seller. It is the collective power of the consumer to take a society forward with respect of awareness and educational development. The purpose of consumer movements is to improve the quality of living of people in a society. The consumer movement ensures quality goods and services to the people at reasonable prices, at right place and time, apart from assuring minimum common facilities and healthy living environment. Now, objectives of consumer movement. The broad common objective of consumer movement are income, information integrity and independence. So I'm starting with first, that is income. A consumer want income. They are concerned with real income, not with the money income. Consumer don't want to get to the roots of their problems. They do want to find a solution that will solve their problem permanently. So the growing interest of consumers in the economic affairs of the country should be considered as a healthy and hopeful trend. After all, the consumers are the ultimate beneficiaries of all economic activities. So their interest in common economic problems are more likely to lead to constructive and socially desirable result-oriented economy. Second one is information. The outstanding characteristic of consumer movement in its concern is for obtaining information. In order to convert money earnings into their real income with a reasonable degree of efficiency, they want to have practical information about goods and services and about their uses and application if necessary. They want to know about goods, they want to know about their use, they want to know about their application. To manage family income to achieve better result in the long run, consumer need to know the problems of budgeting, choice making and whole field of personal economics. If consumers are given with the right kind of information, they can play their part effectively as citizens in the economic community. So the demand for information is the most prominent feature of consumer movement. Consumer cannot possibly become technically expert of all type of products. that they have to buy. So the factual information provided at the right time help in making better judgment. So it is due to this reason the number of consumer asking more and more information is increasing. And this trend is the actual reason for the consumer movement. The third one is integrity. Consumers are interested in the integrity of those who participate in the exchange process. The highest possible standards of honesty are desired not only for the benefit of consumer but also to carry economic activities more efficiently. Consumers are ready to pay for the value addition by the producers as well as the sellers. They want the business transaction to be transparent and like to have win-win proposition. Consumers are interested in joining with business to come out with higher individual standards and more effective organized regulations. The consumer look for a comprehensive legislation needed to protect their interest fully. This was a second object. This was third objective of consumer movement. Then last one is independence. The consumers are basically freedom lovers and they would like to have independence in spending their income, in organizing and expressing their opinion, and freedom to act collectively on their problems without being attacked or interfered with. The philosophy of consumer movement mainly centered around testing and evaluating consumer goods and services offered for the sale and undertaking consumer oriented activities. So they keep testing goods, services offered to them. The consumers are made more awakened, and they question about quality of goods and services. They want the business should give them freedom to choose, as well as they should supply quality goods and safe products to them. Now, the concept of consumerism. In the words of Peter F. Drucker, consumer means that consumer looks upon the manufacturer as someone who's interested but who really doesn't know what the consumer realities are. He regards the manufacturer as somebody who hasn't made the effort to find out, who doesn't understand the world in which consumer lives, and who expects the consumer to be able to make distinction which the consumer is neither willing nor able to make. So in the words of Walters, consumerism is defined as an organized effort by the consumers within the environment designed to aid and protect consumer rights by efforts directed at and through government, business and private organization. Peter F. Drucker said in 1972 that consumerism is a social movement seeking to augment the rights and powers of buyers in relation to sellers. In 1970, the Cravens and Hill said the consumerism is a social force within the environment designed to aid and protect the consumer by exerting legal, moral, economic pressure on the business. Now, from the above the concepts, it is very clear that from the above definitions by different management gurus, it is very clear that the concept of consumerism can be viewed from point of view of consumer movement, from the point of view of business, and from the point of view of society at large. The consumer movement aims at protecting the interest of consumers and seeking remedy for their dissatisfaction frustration caused by the business. And with the help of organized efforts and activities. So business with their organized activities have always caused harm to the consumers. Now with the consumer movement, consumer wants to protect their interest from business. They want remedy for their dissatisfaction and frustration. So from the point of business, the concept of consumerism concept advocate self-regulation to business. And from the society at large, it advocate a greater value to consumers by using judicial ways and optimizing all kinds of natural resources. Consumerism, therefore, is the responsibility of the business to safeguard the interest of the consumer and to promote the welfare of the consumer. So it involves consumer business. So the concept of consumerism involves consumers, business, government, and society at large towards the cause of protecting and promoting consumer interest. Now, the next topic is consumer protection movement in India, or a brief history of consumer protection movement in India. So consumer movement is not a recent phenomenon in India. The issue of consumer protection was well described in ancient Dharma Shastra too. The Smritis, which are ancient code of conduct, identified 4 types of consumer offences which were punishable. The offences were food adulteration, charging high prices, falsification of weights and measures, and sale of forbidden articles. So, consumer movement is not a very recent phenomenon in India. It was in the ancient times too. But in modern era, during the British rule, that is between 1765 to 1947, several legislations were made by British, like Indian Penal Code 1860, the Sale of Goods Act 1930, the Dangerous Drugs Act 1930, and the Drugs and Cosmetic Acts 1940. These were passed by the British to protect and promote British interests, then for advancing the welfare of Indian consumer. In the early 20th century, the 2 great social reformers and pathfinders of the country, like Swami Vivekananda and Mahatma Gandhi, recognized the need for consumer protection. Mahatma Gandhi, in 1890s, in a conference, he said in Africa, he said the consumer is the most important visitor in the premises of business. He is not dependent on business. Business is dependent on him. He is not an interruption to business, or he is not an interruption to work. He is the purpose of it. He is not an outsider to business. He is the part of it. If business is not doing any favor to him by serving goods and services, he is doing favors to business by giving them opportunity to do so. So it is very clear from this what Mahatma Gandhi's views were there regarding consumer protection. The government of India brought out a number of legislation to control unfair and malpractices and to regulate business in the interest of consumers and society. The prominent legislations are Prevention of Food Adulteration Act 1954, Essential Commodities Act 1955, Indian Companies Act 1956, Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act 1969, and Consumer Protection Act 1986. The Mahatma Gandhi was the principal promoter of the consumer movement in India in the modern era. He was the first man who stressed the importance of consumer and the need for consumer protection in the country. The ideas of Mahatma Gandhi became the source of inspiration for the consumer movement in India as well as in world too. His words are very important regarding consumer protection. So, in December 1982, Consumer Education Center was established in Hyderabad, devoting its time to educate the consumer through its quarterly magazine, that is Consumer Network News. In 1984, teachers or faculties and students of Delhi University started voluntary organization in the interest of consumer education. It's called as consumer education, that is voice. So in the same year, that is in 1984 only, the Consumer Unity and Trust Society, that is CUTS, was started in Jaipur, Rajasthan. The objective was to teach consumer by using media. Then in 1985, Consumer Action Group was formed in Madras. The year 1985 also witnessed formation of another consumer organization by name Bombay Telephone User Associations. Formation of this association was because of unjustified heavy telephone bill received by the telephone subscribers. So in India, the development of consumerism largely took place in 1960s, 1970s, and it reached the middle class in 1980s. The process of consumer protection started in real sense in January 1986 with an All India seminar held in New Delhi, which was actively participated by the representative of the state government, voluntary consumer organizations, and union ministers. A new impetus was given to the consumer movement with the enactment of CPA Act 1986. The formation of consumer organization was rather slow prior to enactment of CPA 1986, but after this act, the momentum for consumer movement gained a lot. Now these are the questions which are related to the above topic. If any query is there, please do contact me. If any writing mistake is there, please ignore that writing mistake. Thank you so much.